welcome to first episode of Enterprising Minds. I'm Dave. We got Alex and Ruthi here as well, your hosts for the show. In the inaugural episode, we're going to bring three topics for us to discuss, which may be a format we'll play with, down the line, or we'll just take one big, chunk of a topic that's in the industry and try to lend our voices to it. We may provide an answer, we may not, because some of them, like subfoldering or sub domains, just
it depends.
Will go on forever. Yes. So all about fun. A little bit about us and the podcast idea was that we all met in a previous role that we all shared and became friends, and we love to bounce ideas off of each other. And as soon as we started recording this with the pandemic, at least from my side, teasing it around with some other friends, going, ooh, I'd listen to that. So here we are. We're recording. We're bringing it to you. Thank you for joining us. And Alex, why don't you start us off with a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Alex Picorni. I've been in SEO for over a dozen years now. I'm going to stop counting after a certain point. Been doing agencies, freelancing, in-house roles, name it, kind of across the board. And then did the alphabet soup as well. So B2B, B2C, D2C, name some more. Probably have done those. Mm-hmm. So a variety of clients, which gives kind of an interesting perspective on little bits here and there. But deeper roles at some in-house roles. So always love to see things scale and kind of move up. And kind of as my time with SEO has continued, also seen kind of how the industry has changed, which it has changed significantly over time. As we all know, for the SEO, it changes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But man alive, if you look at like 10 years worth, it really has changed. So that's kind of me. Ruthi?
Hi, Ruthi Corcoran. And, my background is it's a bit of a mix, a lot of in-house, small nonprofits, large enterprise, small teams, large teams, global teams, local teams, sort of a mix of all the in-house activities you could have. SEO has been scattered in throughout my career for the last 10 years or so. Sometimes it's been larger digital marketing more broadly, sometimes more heavily web, sometimes just SEO. It sort of bounces back and forth, but inevitably SEO is one of the fantastic tools that we have in our kit these days. And on the side, I'm pretty excited about keeping up with all the emerging technologies, especially these days. We have a lot of exciting things coming up front that are going to impact SEO and the digital marketing world in a big way, and exploring and sort of speculating about what that might look like and coming along for the ride is a lot of fun.
Right. Yeah. And so finally, Dave Doherty started out as a musician. For those of you watching on YouTube, you'll see the background. That's legit real. That is my studio. And like Ruthi, bounced around a lot. I like to say I graduated into the recession with 2 arts degrees, so I had to build my own way because nobody was going to hire an artist during the Great Recession. So everything from copywriting, PR, crisis management, content marketing, SEO, paid, all of it, from startup companies, solopreneurs, enterprise level, agency, just took one opportunity to the next. But, really, really love the search and the content marketing space. So, how do you find your audience, address your audience in a way that they care about, and, have a good relationship with the people that you're actually trying to serve. Those are my main things. And, they're not actually, listeners probably are not actually here for us. We're here for the topics we will discuss. So now that you know a little bit behind us, and then we're not just some, schmuck in the basement saying we know what we're talking about. We actually do, double-digit experience. Ruthi, you had a topic you wanted to discuss, and then I think we'll kick over to Alex, and we'll wrap up with a quick topic that, maybe will be the standard Dave, rocket launch at the end. We'll see.
Lob a grenade at us. Is that what's going to happen?
We shall see.
So keep it lively.
Yes, exactly.
All right, let's start with the big one. For all the SEOs out there, you're going to appreciate this. And it's communicating SEO's value. Right? Mm-hmm. It's sort of a nebulous thing. It's an important part of our toolkit, but it has a lot of different facets. There's technical components, there's on-page components, and there's enough different nuances that it sort of confounds everyone, especially in leadership. They know it's important, but it's unclear exactly how, and the feedback loops aren't strong. So how do we communicate SEO's value to marketers who are perhaps less in tune with the digital world, to marketers who are really excited about the digital world, and then, of course, leadership and management?
Sure, I can start a little bit. I think it always depends quite a bit right on what you're saying, Ruthi, about on that digital maturity level too, of how excited are they, how interested are they, how educated are they, how much experience they have in it. I mean, the one that I usually start with, like small businesses, is even just talking about offline competition versus online competition. Mm-hmm. If you're a small company, but someone outranks you, even if they're a random blog, they're taking your traffic, even though you're a company and that's a blog. That's a threat to you. So you got to react to that. That's an online competition, issue. And right. Small businesses have that problem constantly, where you have some big, usually kind of conglomerate company who has a whole bunch of different, service providers listed, and their SEO is pretty top notch, and they're all over the place, and they're outranking you, left, right, and center. And then you want a lead from them, they will gladly charge you a lead. So trying to outrank that kind of a company or that kind of competition, it doesn't matter if you're in the healthcare space, same thing. You got big companies out there, big organizations out there, nonprofit organizations, government organizations. That's the online world that is taking that traffic. So that's kind of, I think, a key one is basically trying to set that stage of what are you kind of hoping to achieve with that SEO? Are you trying to just make your brand, more frequently in search? Are you trying to push down competitors because you got somebody who's trying to eat your lunch, Or are you, pushing into a new area, new product? It has so many different kind of entry points. It's kind of almost like the entry points of marketing. Like, what are you trying to do with it?
Right. Well, Step one is, what's your vision? What's your purpose here? What is you're trying to accomplish?
Well, and what you queued up in the beginning, Alex, so how things have changed over the last 10, 15 years. Like, outranking someone 10 years ago, when it really was just about how many internal links do you have, how many external links, like, are you targeting the keyword properly? Do you have enough content around it? That was relatively more easy then, but now I feel like there's so much, SEO for a specific business type, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you're e-commerce first, that's going to naturally put it into a smaller focus, right? And you're going to care less about the article publishing and whatever else, right? I mean, it all depends. Obviously, it all depends. I mean, we are marketers, so we have to say that at least once. Yeah. Anyway, that was my one thought, so I'll stop there.
Yeah, a lot of it for sure goes to what you were talking about, Alex, which is, what is the purpose? What is it that you're trying to achieve here? We've all been in that scenario where you get, what are our top 20 keywords? Well,
yeah, vanity rank.
What is it we're trying to do? Like, we're not going to compete with Wikipedia. That's not what our purpose is. Right. So step one is, hey, let's take a look at what it is that we're trying to do. Whether we're trying to sell something, whether or not we're trying to just be more present in the marketplace we're in. And then I suppose the next step from there we think about is, okay, how does SEO help us better understand our customers? That's always top of mind. I think that's a big piece of SEO's values. It helps us understand what is it that the people that we're targeting, our audiences that we're targeting, what are they looking for? How are they speaking? And from there, then who are our competitors within the space? which kind of goes back to that point of Wikipedia, right? If all the keywords you're targeting are leading to sort of generic information sharing, does that relate to your goal? Because if you're trying to sell something and you're going after phrases and search terms and that are all informational, well, you've got a disconnect there. So helping you reach your business's goals and then helping you better understand your audience, I think those are two really good starting points.
Mm-hmm. I think there's another thing too with it, though, with the value for what, right? I mean, as search practitioners, of course, we're going to immediately go to the kind of intrinsic value of it. It's like, well, of course it's valuable. That's what we've been doing for 15 years. But I think I come back to a presentation that I saw Rand Fishkin give a year ago or so, where he compared it to paid search. And how do you why does paid search always get the dollars over SEO when SEO always converts better, brings in more traffic, yada, 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 all the stuff that we know. And he had the interesting thought there was that it was easier to communicate the value of paid because it's easier to understand, right? You put $1 in, you get $1.50 back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can immediately talk about it. You don't have to talk about the 2-year lead cycles, right? For something like a really complex healthcare product, right? Yeah. Where you might actually circle through a couple of people in a role before the customer actually buys the product that they started, a long time ago. And so it just the value of SEO is more of that relationship. It's more of that long term. It's more of that, I think SEO's value in that regard really is the kind of the digital health of the organization. Like how good are all of your marketing plans, your channel mix, your
more as an indicator.
Yeah, right. Rather than the individual tactics. So thoughts on that? Does that spark any ideas?
Yeah, that's an interesting stat. And Ruthi, Dave, you were both kind of talking about there's the data analytics, data insights aspect of SEO. And I think that is really undervalued. I mean, it's not what someone thinks about when they think about SEO. It's basically the blue links on Google. Are you ranking number one? Are they ranking number one and all the rest? And it's kind of still stuck in that era instead of thinking about something a little bit further along the line of customer insights. Can we actually start informing? Can we start to understand, how we are positioned in the market? What people see us as? What kind of keywords are actually converting? Should we be doubling down with paid search and SEO basically in that area? Or are we seeing some stuff from paid and then pulling those keywords in and saying, hey, this is, some phrases and some topics we want to build some content around from an SEO standpoint. Like there's always that kind of back and forth relationship that can exist and should exist. But that other side from the dollar value, it's funny, you mentioned was Rand Fishkin and Will Reynolds did a SEER fireside chat, and it's on the SEER website if you are interested in it. But they went back and forth. I don't know if it's the same one you're thinking about, but they went back and forth on the value of SEO. And Will Reynolds from SEER was talking about, okay, so one easy one that a lot of SEOs do, and this is one you're going to find in blogs everywhere, is you take what is the Google keyword tools cost per click for that given term, and then multiply it by how much traffic you got and say, we're going to give you this dollar value of traffic. Yeah. Right. You saved on paid search by doing SEO. That's a metric there. And Will Reynolds was like, okay, I'll take maybe 70% of that, 60% of that, heck, 30% of that. Doesn't matter. I'm able to kind of pull credit for what we've been able to do. So it's a dollar value kind of way to do it. If you're e-commerce, of course, it's a lot easier, math. When you talk about what's the conversion, what's the profit margin, what's the profit of a particular purchase and average order volume, lifetime customer value, and go into all those metrics if you have those dollars. But if you don't, you can do the CPC one. I don't know, like if you try to get real tangible, like probably real tactical, aside from CPC, what's another kind of valuation way that you can do or way that you can value SEO?
Yeah, so we can think of a couple. And I remember Google has some sort of ROI calculator that I've used in the past. I don't know if it exists anymore. We could find a link if it's still there, where they sort of give you estimates. But it's all based off of whether or not you're selling a product. And I think that's sort of an interesting piece to this, which is CPC and using the paid search data. That gives you a proxy if you don't have it, right? The ideal case is, especially if you're e-commerce, you're selling things, you can see, okay, somebody came in through organic search, they clicked this, this, and this, and then they bought the product. Hooray. Except, of course, we all know that marketing and customer journeys are much more complex, right? Organic is one piece of the larger pie. So part of it is having the infrastructure in place to be able to see how people are coming through and at what points, and then where in the buying cycle are you influencing them. And that can be really sophisticated. But I keep thinking of, there's this fantastic Rory Sutherland lecture that he gives where he does a good job of reminding us all that we are playing the financiers' games. This is the accountants' games, which is they love the spreadsheets. They love to see the ROI. Right? But marketing isn't necessarily all about ROI, right? That's, of course, an important piece, but we also have to remember, like, there's some more esoteric pieces of this. Like, what is the value of being present and findable on the internet? Right. Like that has some intrinsic value in and of itself. And it's how do we communicate that component as well as the very strict ROI? What's the dollar value on this?
Right. To that point, I think with some of the solopreneurs or the startup companies I worked with a long time back, right?
Yeah.
People don't search for what they don't know. So if you have some crazy unique name, well, then you have to go hit the ground and do all of the PR stuff. You have to get all of the radio shows, do a bunch of advertising so that people start to know your name, right? And that is easily tracked. That's where, for me, branded search really comes into play, is when you have a new product, new brand, new company, and you want to see how much purchase you're getting within the markets that you're targeting, right? Because if people are actually remembering it and using it, or even getting a misspelling of it, right? You're starting to be top of mind. But once you have that established company, it does become much more of that accountant game, and tailoring your message to whatever leader you have for the next 2 years, right?
That's a really good point, Dave. They're sort of keeping in mind not only what SEO is valuable for, but also what it's not valuable for. Because I've definitely worked in organizations or situations where it just didn't make sense for us to have a strong SEO play, because, to your point, we were targeting something that people didn't even know existed, let alone that they might want it. And so in that case, right, some of the social media targeting made a lot more sense, because we could target interests, because we could say, okay, if you're interested in this, you might be interested in this, which is a little trickier to do in the search space. So it's good to know your limitations.
We could actually probably transfer to the next topic too, just because we're kind of right there and we're kind of edging up against it, which is, what do most organizations get wrong about SEO? And one that always comes to mind, of course, is speed. And basically a little bit of the SEO magic part. So 2 parts. One is exactly throwing a little magic, little SEO fairy dust on each of those pages, and we've SEO'd it, which I hate that phrase so much. It's not there's no stopping point here. I guess one of the big ones always is the question of, what's the timeline going to be? When am I going to see results? There's always that question comes up first. And the expectation is based upon other forms of, digital marketing channels. You turn on that paid search campaign and you start getting traffic that day or that hour, potentially that minute.
Right.
Same thing with your social media campaign, especially from an advertising standpoint, not necessarily organic, but from an advertising standpoint, absolutely. You move that needle pretty quick. And then the other one that I always see is also like, what does SEO all entail? And then when is it done? Because you have that phrase of SEO it, or do the SEO thing, or whatever, phrasing they end up using. But it all gets down to the same thing of they're looking for a cut and dry activity each time.
Yes. Jumping off that, sort of SEO activity, I think that has led to a lot of unnecessary SEO activities, myths, factoids, right? There's a lot of things that can lead you astray in the world. And I think of things like link toxicity and link sculpting and things like this, which, yeah, maybe at the margin can impact you, but aren't really going to have a lot of lift. And so I think it's really easy to get stuck in some of these avenues that aren't particularly helpful, or, there's a lot of low hanging fruit. And then on the flip side, you miss the unseen things. It's the boring stuff, like making sure you have a proper sitemap, making sure you have proper robots file, like things that just aren't really exciting, but at the end of the day are leaving a foundation for something that's going to be really good.
I've said for a long time that SEO is like plumbing, because you don't really care about it until the toilet starts overflowing, and then you're like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And, because when you log into your analytics and you see that you've gotten no traffic for a week and a half, hopefully you're in your analytics more than that, and you discover that your intern disallowed everything accidentally, that's a problem.
That's actually another point that we kind of missed with the kind of the value is also risk mitigation. And there's kind of a liability of like large organization, small organization, anytime there's a code launch, website launch, relaunch, redesign, you name it, hosting change, domain name change, you name it, there's giant risk that basically gets plastered all over it. It's usually up to an SEO to figure out, okay, how are we going to mitigate this risk or try to eliminate it as much as we can? So that's also a piece of it too.
I think
that gets glossed over real quick though. I mean, because it's seen as, okay, we have yet another delay to the website launch.
Yes.
And how much effort do you want to really put on these developers? They're already overworked.
Well, have you guys been seeing on LinkedIn? I've been targeted by these posts that they're coming from a number of different sources, but it's just like, 50% of SEOs are waiting for code changes. And it's like, well, yeah, that's the nature of the beast. Like, of course, because
yeah. I mean, getting to what Ruthi was talking about, like link toxicity and disallows and stuff like that. There's a reason why people gravitate toward those blog posts, pop up of how to go through that. It's because you have control over that. It's one of the few things you get control over. Right. All those other systems, all those other things, the big ones that really make a difference, like, new content, you don't. So then it becomes this big giant, you're waiting game. Yeah, you're right. It's a waiting game.
Well, and when your leadership is expecting a recession that may or may not actually occur and you have no budget, but you still have to justify your existence, what are you going to do? You're going to find some obscure metric and you're going to shove it as hard as you can.
Authority day. Domain authority.
That's right.
What does it do? Nothing.
It signs RFPs. That's what that does.
It's a number and it's going up and to the right, so I can put it on a slide and be proud.
But that I think gets at it, which is there's a component of SEO which can be a growth driver, and it's the hard stuff. It's like, let's learn from our customers, let's inform our content so that we can have good quality content, and that's super hard. And then the other half of SEO is like replacing your roof. Like, you spend a lot of money, and at the end of the day, you have a new roof, which is important, but like, you're not really that excited about it. And I think that's sort of the tension there, which is... It's both exciting to be a growth driver and also exceptionally hard. And it's really boring to replace your roof.
It's like supply chain in that respect, like supply chain for digital products, because whenever you're at a backyard barbecue and you meet somebody that works in supply chain, there is that pause where you're just like, oh, okay, what do you do? I mean, they end up being nice people, but and talk about another profession where it's totally details that certain people care about. And if you're on the outside of it, you're just like, okay, cool. So I'm getting my package. Awesome.
I'm getting my converting traffic. Cool. Thanks.
So Yeah.
You gonna lob a grenade?
Go for it, Dave. Hold that pen, buddy.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, I had two that I was going to maybe talk about because I think like most marketers, or at least the ones I hang out with, we've been doing deep dives into generative AI since November of last year. And with a couple of my friends, I think, Alex, you and I talked about this off camera, so I hope you don't mind me saying it. Yeah. You know, when I first started in search and got my first agency job, I remember going to a local event, right? It was their big annual search event. And I walked into the room, and it's the first time in a professional setting where I've seen, 2,000 people who do the exact same thing that I'm doing. And I remember immediately having the thought going, I have to be better than every single person in this room. Like, this is my competition in terms of like providing good work to clients, having the right skill set, and just doing all of that. And then, over the course of that day, it was like, oh, right. But if I'm client facing, that gives me a level up on, some of these coder people or, yada, yada. So you start refining your list. But I thought of that experience again recently when I was on one of these AI things. And the phrase was, AI is not going to replace marketers. It's going to marketers who use AI will replace those who don't. Right. And that's from the Marketing AI Institute, which is a great resource if anybody needs. So how are you guys feeling with competition against other marketers or other marketing providers now that generative AI is part of our life experience? In terms of career development or whatever else.
I've got a really long one. I don't know if we can branch into it.
Well, Ruthi seems annoyed with my question, so why don't we start with her?
No, I'm contemplative. I think it's a very good question because I think that's the one that's in front of all of us. There's a lot of excitement and curiosity with AI, and there's also, at least on my part, a little bit of dread, a little bit of FOMO. Like there's a lot going on there. Alex, I will kick it off to you if you already know what you're going to say, and I will contemplate a little bit more.
One of the main things I was thinking about with any of the diffusion or LLM AI, generative AIs that basically have come out recently is I think of it in terms of a 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G kind of mobile phone network perspective, where this is technology. It is not the application that was built on top of it. It's something that's going to enable something pretty cool that's going to be probably world changing. So, 2G to 3G, we went from letters to images, which gave us MySpace and Facebook. 3G to 4G gave us video, so we got TikTok. But 4G to 5G is probably going to give us some kind of AR, VR thing, which is going to be pretty awesome because data transfer basically is allowed at that point. You finally can have that bandwidth connection to support those different mediums, which then allows a whole new industry. People who produce TikTok videos and a lot of people who sit on their couch watching those TikTok videos. So
until it's banned.
Yeah, right. We'll see where all that goes right now. But I see it as that's because it's, those coming changes are based upon this core technology. How much do you need to understand the difference between 3G and 4G? You really don't. You don't really have to understand that. But you have to, as a marketer, have a really good understanding of how you can utilize Facebook for a client. Yeah. So right now, it just seems like we're seeing, beta versions and demo sites and, quick little apps that do one particular thing, but they don't really do much else. Right. Those kind of things make me think that we're in the very early stages and we're still at that point where we're just starting to scratch the surface and trying to figure out, okay, this is a really cool technology. What can we do with it? Yeah. And we're all kind of still in that early phase of what can we do with it. I think Bing And Microsoft as a whole is further down the line than anybody else. Google is obviously trying to catch up, and they're not doing a real good job of it. They're just announcing new partnerships, so maybe they'll get there, but not yet. So Microsoft 365 is finally going to get better, basically, and Bing is someplace where people want to go to, which is just mind blowing as an SEO to say that. Still, I'm still trying to get over that. I mean, usually it's like Bing, I know, but really Bing, it's like you're apologizing right after you say Bing. Now it's like you go to
it's
Bing.
not just 70-year-olds. It's okay.
Hey, it used to be the case that 30% of B2B was on Bing, so you had to pay a little bit of attention.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're doing healthcare market, government, people who basically can't change their browser, or people who aren't technologically astute enough to change their browser, you're hitting those audiences. It was great, but I would always have to caveat after I say Bing, and I'm trying to stop myself. It's like there's a psychological tick that I've got with Bing, but I'm fucking over it here. But I think yes, we definitely need to keep on top of it. You need to understand some of the limitations of it, because no doubt your clients, your boss, your coworkers have already brought it up, and you've already been asked for an opinion on it. So that's not going to stop. As the technology progresses, it's going to become a lot more useful, a lot more fun. But I would totally encourage anybody to at least try some of them out, create some accounts. A lot of them are free. Play around with it. Just at least nothing else. Get an understanding of how could this be used, and to start realizing some limitations, because every technology has got problems. I mean, every technology does. So it's a good thing to be cognizant of those when people are getting into kind of a fever for new tech.
I will say just a quick interjection. Have you guys played around with Bard yet? Have you unlocked? Okay.
No, it's on the wait list.
So I got access 2 days ago, and I started playing around with it. And it's one of the features that I love about it, as opposed to any of the other ones, is that it gives you 3 drafts of the same thing. So you can toggle between the 3, and it will give you the reasons why one does one thing better. Like this has this type of voice, and this one sounds friendlier than this one. And that kind of editorial on the thing that I asked you to do is wonderful. I'm still going to copy edit it. I'm still going to, do all the stuff. I'm not going to just take it verbatim, but I think that one feature really kind of lifts Bard in my mind over some of the other ones. Like you said, Alex, though, everything is still just an experiment and still whatever. So I'm interested to see how these go. But
it's moving super fast, though. I mean, it's still an experiment right now, but holy cow, is it moving fast? Difference in technology. I mean, you said you were looking at this stuff since November. Well, that's when ChatGPT got released. Yeah. And that was 3, and then 3.5 got released. Now 4 is out. They're talking about 5 being next. I mean, it's moving way faster than most other technologies. And I think the other big thing is it's way more companies, so it's a lot harder to keep track of. Not just Apple versus Microsoft or versus Google or somebody else. It's not big 3. No, it's hundreds of companies.
Right.
That to me, I think, is what's most surprising, and something that you got to keep track of. I mean, in general, this is, Dave, the question you pose is something that I'll continue to be thinking about for the coming months, probably the coming years. And at the moment, it does seem like it's the marketers who utilize it that are going to be the winners. But your point about it moving fast, it's moving very fast, which makes me stop and go, there's probably some unknown unknowns here in this new world of AI that we won't even see because we can't see. We don't have the infrastructure necessarily. But some of the things that pop to mind when you ask that question, in listening to your analogy with the 2G, 3G, Alex, there's this fantastic Virgil Abloh quote where he says, I think what makes room for large opportunity is there's new space for new dialogue. And that's exactly where we're at right now. There's so much new space for dialogue and new ways of thinking about the world and how we interact and the tools that we use. That's a huge opportunity creator. The other little quote that I've got in the back of my mind, I was listening to Kevin Kelly yesterday. He's got a new book coming out. Kevin Kelly's fantastic, right? You can read his works on the internet. when it was evolving, and sort of get a sense of a similar sort of paradigm shift in the world, I suppose. And one of the things that he talks a lot about, and I've heard him say over and over, is don't be the best, be the only. And I think that, to me, is sort of what this AI area really opens up when we can think about as marketers, is how do we use AI to do the thing we couldn't do before, to be the only one who can do certain things, rather than trying to beat out all the other marketers at copywriting or something like this. I think if we try and play the competition game, well, we ourselves might be sort of outsourced by the technologies. Whereas if we find new, unique ways of using the technology, that gives us something, certainly a competitive advantage in the marketplace, but also something interesting to do, right? Like we can grow and we can evolve with the technology as it's moving so rapidly.
There's also value. I was just thinking, kind of the different questions we've talked about today, like the value of an SEO. Now we're kind of getting to like the value of having a person do SEO. Really.
Yes. Yeah.
And what's the future kind of value of that person? How do you maintain your value or increase your value? And a lot of it gets down to, this is techie stuff. While there's a user experience element to it, and some of the user experiences are very, very easy to use, they're still intimidating because they're different than what it was before. And any kind of change management activity, you still have those early adopters, you still have the late adopters. And quite frankly, you got a whole bunch of people who just don't have the time or care, or bandwidth to basically deal with this stuff. So they're still going to look for an SEO to figure out how to use generative AI to basically make themselves a better SEO, which is something that a lot of other people have no interest in doing. So as long as you kind of keep going down that path yourself, you're creating kind of intrinsic value for yourself. You're keeping up to date. You're probably saving yourself some time and headache. You might be playing around with some cool tools, running into frustration with tech. Sure, there's pro and con there, but you're still a techie person who's going to be dealing with stuff that other people would rather not deal with. So you're still going to have value. I mean, that's part of it.
Maybe that's the true niche of the SEO, Alex. The techie person who will do things other people don't want to or don't understand.
I'm doing a whole bunch of redirects. Who cares? Nobody but me. Who knows the value? Nobody but me.
But it's real important, so you better do it.
Exactly. Will I eventually communicate this when I'm done? Yeah, fine.
It's like turmeric, but you need the black pepper.
That's right.
Helps with inflation. General inflation.
Really? Do you have anything for general frustration? So it is interesting you bring up the general value, because the second one that I had is actually tied to this, because in these larger discussions with and some of the articles that I've been seeing and stuff too, there's so many people making these declarative statements that I just feel are so unwarranted. Like, GPT will replace SERPs. Don't Google it, just GPT it. And I'm like, you're a moron if you do that. Like, do both. Like, see what happens, right? But don't just rely on it like that. It's not a reasoning thing, right? And this is where I think with the history of how search has changed, right? You bring up 3G, 4G, 5G. Mm-hmm. I mean, we still have some. If you're doing global marketing, right? I mean, you should take that into account when you're designing your sites, because you're going to have some priority countries that are still running a 2G or a 3G.
Right. Yeah.
They're not going to have the download speeds that are available, or it's still going to be on the cell towers. And if you're building an American-based website with all the video and bells and whistles and whatever, it's just, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? But I also think of, like, there's going to be some lag time, right? There's all these marketers that are jumping in, trying things out, trying some new things, and then making these declaratives when really it's you're at the tip of the spear. You have to account for that 10-year, 15-year adoption of the normal person, and then the laggards, right? I mean, so even though it's fast and it's amazing and it's awesome now, I don't think most of the general public even cares yet, right?
Yeah, there's a weird bubble that happens. I think that's a kind of a little bit of a sign of the times, a little bit, but it's also where we get our information from. If it's from Twitter, essentially, who knows, Mastodon, maybe, who knows, LinkedIn, other sites, Ars Technica, you're in this little tech bubble. I mean, you're part of this small population. The other one I would say, though, in kind of defense of is it a bubble or is it not, is, and it's a stat that's been thrown around a lot, of ChatGPT and the number of user accounts, how fast it hit 1 million,
Yes.
which is faster than TikTok. So, yeah, there's a consumer element to it that's still fairly broad. And if it's brought into things like Bing, actually your 70-year-old's going to be using it before your 50-year-old, weirdly enough. So
Guys,
they just won't know it.
70-year-olds are still on the tech. We got to up our age, like 90. Like it's
Probably
just
true. Yeah, right.
Nobody in my family makes it that long. I don't know. How do you?
Health issues aside, I guess.
we got good genes.
Yeah, right.
I hang out with a lot of 70-year-olds. They're great. Love them. But on that point, though, this feels a little faster. A little faster. I think this technology, like internet, took a while, right? Where it was like, oh, it was on Good Morning America, and people were like, what do we do with this thing and all that stuff. I think the time it took for ChatGPT to be on the Good Morning America was much faster, which is sort of interesting to watch. The adoption might be quicker because of the Bing, certainly, but also because of maybe it's the wow factor, perhaps, as well.
Yeah. I think there's an element, main element that I just think of with ChatGPT was it has a threat to journalism. And where do we get all our news? Journalists, and they're threatened by this tool. They see it as, some big scary thing that is producing content, which is their job. It's doing it fairly well. There's like this natural kind of like feedback loop of journalists having opinions about it super quick, and you just get a whole bunch of news published about it, which gives it that spin. I don't know. I was sending it in a text conversation because I was trying to figure out, like, why does AI seem so cool? Because the phrase AI has been around forever. It's like people, when they say that the algorithm, and it's like, that's a really simple equation. We're going to call it an algorithm because it's fancy. But why does this seem cool? And what it got down to was, and I really wanted to hear your guys' opinion about this because there's just kind of random thought of like, maybe this is it, was we understand a little bit of how we input into it, basically writing out a sentence, a phrase, you name it, something pretty natural language that you're just saying like you normally would to anybody else. You don't really understand what it does. And it produces something far faster than any alternative. So there's like an element of it that we understand and it seems comfortable. But then there's this sudden element where it's like, I don't have a good frame of reference to attach to it. So it seems really cool. Like, yeah, a sports car seems cooler than, a Toyota Camry because the sports car is faster, but you've got so many other elements to it, costs, whether or not, works for where you happen to live, all the rest of those kind of things kind of come in, and it breaks down the coolness factor of it. This, on the other hand, doesn't have so many other factors to it. It's very simplistic as well, where you put in something pretty basic, you get something back that you fully understand. You just don't have a good preference for alternative.
I do think you answered your own question, to be honest. For me, I think back to when I took the first internship that I could get, and it was writing product descriptions and meta descriptions for a startup e-commerce company, right?
Yeah.
When you're writing the 6th version of a 6-pack of socks, you question your life choices, right? So if you can just say, write a general description for a 6-pack of plain white socks, and you get 2-3 versions, boom, 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 boom. Yeah. Because now you're not hating your life. Like, I totally get that. It allows you to get rid of a lot of that just grinding work that unless you are a writer who likes a particular type of thing, right? I think like most people, as someone with a writing degree, I think I like writing more than most people and the nuances of it. I think most people in the workforce are just like, yeah, it's something I do. I write. I do the emails. I do the whatever, blah, 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 blah. But, and when you're after your 6th meeting, are you really going to come up with the best copy when you've just been listening to other people talk for, that long? Or no, you're just going to pump it out and try to get it done as quickly as possible. And again, it goes back to how is your organization set up, right? If you have been thinning out your marketing ranks and everybody's doing, more with less, even though the leadership won't ever say that, you're going to find the workarounds, right? And that's the thing for me, that
heck of a workaround.
It is. Now, I think it's going to be awesome for the good enough content, but where you truly want to differentiate, right? Then you're gonna want to have that extra time. You're gonna want to find the person who's looked into copywriting, for marketing really well, or someone who can bring together analogies, really well, because it will be like, going to a David Chang restaurant or buying Top Ramen, right? I mean, there's going to be a difference.
I have a quite a different answer than the one that you bring up, Dave. Although I think yours is an important one, which is it takes care of a lot of the tedium in the corporate world. I mean, that alone is a cool factor. Another dimension to it is, right, computers have had a lot of potential for a long time. Like they've been part of our world, well, our entire lives. Most people, they've been part of their world. If you're living in the United States for a good chunk of your life, but it always required a ton of input. And you alluded to this too a little bit, Alex. You can get some real cool stuff back with an Excel formula, but you have to know how to use Excel. Like you have to be the techie who does it. And I think the key here is it does give something back. Like you all of a sudden are not just doing voice to text for it to record what you're saying into your little notepad on the computer. Now all of a sudden you're writing something and it is giving you something back. And that is a very new experience that we haven't really had with computers in such a streamlined way of I can ask a question or I can put out a statement and all of a sudden I'm getting a response that's pretty damn good. It's not perfect. It certainly needs some editing or some fact checking, but that's sort of a different way that we're interacting for the first time with computers. And that didn't strike me until you asked that question.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that is something about kind of each one of these kind of new technologies that becomes so fascinating about them is because it becomes more natural, basically. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're not typing in restaurant near me, which is a really weird phrase. You walk up to somebody and say restaurant near me, they're going to stare at you. You say, hey, can you suggest random restaurants around here that are open for lunch? And somebody standing next to you can give you a response to that. That's a much more natural way to go about it. And if you're able to have an input like that versus typing out a weird phrase, then there's like it clicks a little bit faster. I guess that's an element of it too that I wasn't thinking about was how natural is it, or how back to the way people interact in the real world is it, and is it helping us get further towards that real world?
I was smiling when you were talking because it reminded me of one of my favorite stand-up sort of like one-man show things by Colin Quinn. So The History of New York. And he talks about how, New Yorkers, when they're asking for, they see somebody eating something they want to try. It's just, hey, where'd you get that? Is it good?
Yes.
So we've gone from that in-person experience to restaurant near me.
Yes.
Yeah. And actually, really what you bring up is kind of a perfect tease for what we end up talking about in episode 3. So for anybody who's made it this far, stay tuned for that. Join us for that. And I don't know, any final thoughts, any recommendations from the week on fun things you might have seen or?
I've got one on this topic.
Okay.
Cool.
I would just say a pitch just to keep trying new stuff. Keep looking at basically this kind of news and try to keep up as you can. It's going to change rapidly, but there's so many different companies out there and so many different things that you're going to get a unique blend just by trying to keep up with it.
Yes. And taking a bit of the opposite approach on that. If you're feeling a little angst, a little dread with how fast things are moving, highly recommend some of the articles that Douglas Adams wrote as the personal computer and internet was emerging, because it's a similar phenomena and some of the ways that we think about it can be similar. So we'll toss those in the show notes.
It's a great suggestion.
Yeah, my recommendation, it actually popped up today when I was looking at LinkedIn, is Lego company marketing. It is just wonderful how not serious they take themselves. You know, the question they posed on LinkedIn today was, Batman Legos, do they only come in black or very, very dark gray? It's like, yes, I mean, dark love gray. That so much. I love that. Yeah. So anyway, anybody out there, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. We will see you in the next episode of Enterprising Mind, and have a great time experimenting with the new tools out there. Take care.
Cheers.